and go around the dais. This is the first meeting of the City Council that was elected in November. So we have some new people joining us, and we're going to take a few minutes and make sure that they recognize who they are and their position on the council as well. So we'll start with the city clerk and keep going around the dais.
Good evening, Emily Kunze, Deputy City Clerk.
Tarek Bakari, District 6.
Greg Phipps, District 4.
Good evening, Luana Mayfield, District 3.
Good evening, Dimple Ajmera, at large.
Good evening, James Mitchell, at large.
Good evening, Vi Lyles, Mayor.
Good evening, Julie Eisel, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember at large.
Happy Monday, Braxton Winston at large.
Ed Driggs, District 7.
Good evening, Justin Harlow, District 2.
Larkin Eggleston, District 1.
Marcus Jones, City Manager.
Bob Hageman, City Attorney.
The Charlotte City Council begins our meeting with an invocation followed by the...
District 6.
Greg Phipps, District 4.
Modern technology.
We begin our meeting with an invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation is a personal expression by the members of the council intended to solemnize our proceedings. We note and celebrate the diversity of our community, including our religious diversity, including those that don't have a religious faith. So you are welcome to stand and may choose to not do so. I would, however, ask everyone to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance, and our invocation tonight will be given by Mayor Pro Tem Julie Eisel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is a reading that literally came off my family home wall from when I was little, and it's just a great piece. It dates back to presumably the 1920s. There's some question about it, and some of you might recognize it, but it's a great guideline for words to live by. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself to others, you may become vain and bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly to the counsel of the years. Gracefully surrender the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars, and you have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt, the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whoever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful, strive to be happy.
Thank you. Can we stand for our Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin our meeting, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Bill Malik from Mecklenburg County, from the, I believe it's, what kind of district is it?
Most powerful.
Can we all say it together, the most powerful district? So thank you for being here. And I also see the Girl Scout troop in the audience, if you would stand so that we could recognize you as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we're going to begin our business meeting with the consent agenda, and we have several modifications to the consent agenda. So let me start off with, we are going to move items 48 and 51 to January the 8th. So if you're here for the item 48, if I can find it here, Gum Branch Sanitary Sewer Parcel number 10, or 51, it is Gum Branch Sanitary Sewer Parcel number 2. Those will be on January the 8th. We have settled several items that we had for property acquisitions on our agenda. There are items 49, again, the sanitary sewer, 52, the sanitary sewer, 53, as well as 54. I'm sorry, 54 is Paw Creek Sanitary Sewer instead of Gum Branch. So those were settled, and we no longer need to address them. I'm going to ask the city clerk to read into the record number 20 after it's approved, or before we approve it, what the correction is that needs to be made for item number 20, which is public infrastructure improvements and repairs in subdivisions.
The correction is the MBE percentage is 18%.
So if you will make that note in your agenda, it's 18% on that item. So with that, we're going to move. Also, we're going to pull for discussion by the council on January 8th, the following items. The council has decided that there needs to be additional information or discussion around these items. 22, aerial imagery services. 23, telecommunications infrastructure management services. 43, innovation and technology data center lease agreement amendment. And 40, application for public monument as a public hearing. So with that, the remaining items, 14, with the exception of those that I've read through 57, I'd like to have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. And I'd also like to recognize Dr. Harlow to make a comment, as well as followed by Mr. Winston to make another comment. And Dr. Harlow?
Yeah, for consent item 19, the West Moorhead and I-77 pedestrian improvement project, just wanted to highlight the Wesley Heights Community Organization and their work and community engagement. So we continue to try to be a pedestrian-friendly city. These improvements under the interstate, as we walk in or from uptown into our neighborhoods around 3rd Ward and Wesley Heights, really appreciate the community engagement that has gone along with that. And this is part of your tax dollars and voter-approved bond dollars for the CNET projects.
Thank you. Mr. Winston?
Yes, I would like to just make a public comment about agenda number 14, which is the expansion of the Charlotte Bicycle bike sharing system. I understand that we are basically accepting federal grant money and moving it to that program. I just had a couple of things that we should continue to pay attention to as we continue to expand and provide transportation options for everyone here in Charlotte. This idea of what is a bicycle-friendly street network, what does that entail? Who gets to judge that? Does everybody get to get a bicycle? Also, just with the way I like to look at government investment in things is that we should be investing in growth and not necessarily consumption. Bicycle at one point in time was, I think, the only bike sharing program here in Charlotte. Now, as of very recently, that is not necessarily the case. I just I live next to Garinger High School, and I saw several people riding Lime bikes. I have never seen bicycles in my neighborhood. So as different entities enter the market, we should take a look at the wisdom of investing public funds where the private market can maintain solutions that might be more to scale in different parts of the city, solutions that might provide better uses of technology. For instance, Bicycle uses very expensive docking stations that limit where and who can use those bicycles. New technologies and new companies and new market solutions don't necessarily have those restrictions, and may be more useful to expand different transportation options for everybody in all parts of Charlotte. I recognize that Bicycle might, what I see is concentrated in the uptown area. That is not necessarily a service that is there for everyone. And I would look to the costs. Again, sometimes $8 single-use ride might be pretty cost prohibitive when there are $1 rides available to different people in the city. So I just wanted to call attention to this. Like I said, I know that we're kind of passing through this as federal grant money, but it should be something that we consider as we consider a more comprehensive transportation system that looks to include roads, rails, public transportation has been spoken on during the public forum, and walkable and bikeable spaces.
Thank you. So with that, we have a motion and a second for approval of the consent items. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. So on our policy agenda, I know, we'll give everybody a chance to get out of here. I believe our next item is a public hearing on a resolution to close a portion of North Brevard Street. I saw what was on the agenda. Here. Do we have any speakers signed up for the public hearing?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Can I have a motion to open and close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. So the next item on our agenda is the city manager's.
Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Need to approve item B,
I'm sorry.
closure.
Do we have a motion to close that portion?
Second.
No. Any discussion?
Actually,
I think you need to
it's Mayfield.
approve. We did the closure already.
Right.
B. B.
We closed the hearing.
We closed the
We need to make a
hearing.
motion to close the street.
We now need to close the street, and I'm trying to find my page. Okay, Part B, adopt a resolution to close a portion of North Brevard Street. I thought that's what I said. I'm sorry if I didn't. First, we have a motion, a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. The next agenda item that we have is the city manager's report. Mr. Manager?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Over the course of the past few months, Mayor and council, the team has come together with a 30, 60, 90-day planning tool. We believe it's very important to inform both the mayor and the council, as well as the community, in terms of what are some of the items that may be coming up in the next 30, 60, 90 days. We're going to start off with just the first 30, okay? And with that said, some of the issues that will come up over the course of the next month or so will be the ETJ policing discussion. As you may recall, that's something that we have discussed staff to staff with the county, and we believe we've come to a resolution. And so we'd like to make sure that we have that discussion with the council over the course of the next 30 days or so. Also, the South End plan and update, we'd like to make sure that we have that in front of the council. The Charlotte Gateway Station, we'd like to make sure that's in front of you, as well as the discussion about the retreat planning. As you know, on the calendar, we have the retreat set for the last Wednesday of the month and the first, I guess, Thursday and Friday of February. With that said, there's some issues that we'd also like to be able to discuss in the near term. That includes coming back to you with the 3 surplus schools in terms of affordable housing. And then lastly, as a team, with some of the issues that have been going on in terms of security and communication, we're working through what we call a tabletop exercise, where we're trying to make sure that we have great lines of communication within the staff staff to the electeds and the electeds to the community as well as staff to the community. So that's something that we're working on also over the course of the next 30 days or so. That's my report.
Okay, Mr. Driggs?
Are we going to get all that in writing? I mean, everybody's taking shorthand.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, in regards to the retreat, do we know whether or not that's going to be an in-town or an out-of-town retreat this year?
I believe it's going to be out of town. It is going to be out of town. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said believe. It will be out of town. We have not decided on a location yet, but it will be out of town. I really feel like that is when we really focus, and even last year when we were out of town, we had a lot of things going on. So the manager has talked about the 30 days topics so that we can actually focus on more strategic topics at our retreat. And that's one reason that we're trying to work all of these meetings out, and a lot of them. I understand that. Ms. Eisel?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Manager, one other question. In a few meetings ago in the old council, Ed McKinney had given us a presentation on the UDO update, and we had asked for a timetable with dates as to the progress of the UDO. Is there any update on when we can get that update?
Sure. We can work on this. This is interesting. I thought we were making a giant leap today with getting the first 30 days out.
Okay.
But we'll continue to take the planning tool that we have that's 30, 60, 90 and make sure that that falls somewhere in that time frame.
And then one other item, and then the other item that we had, which I think would fall within the 60 to 90, was the clean air resolution. I believe it was to go back for 60 days. Is that right, Mr. Hagman? And then at that point, I don't think we resolved how long it would take staff to come back to us with some answers in terms of some kind of a plan to achieve, whether or not we could achieve such a resolution.
So I believe where we left that off was basically when the committees came back, this would be one of the first referrals to the environmental committee.
Yeah, that's true. It will go.
Thank you.
So with that, any other questions of the manager? The next item on our agenda are mayor and city council topics. For the newer members, I just wondered if we should actually start with Mr. Phipps and come back around that way. This is the time that council raises any questions or comments that we don't resolve necessarily tonight, but we put on our agenda and try to fit them in to one of our ways of dealing with questions and issues. So I'm going to start with Mr. Phipps and go around, and we'll end with Mr. Bakari.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone who came out this past Saturday to our second annual Reconcile Charlotte event sponsored by Samaritan's Feet and Publix Charities. As you know, Samaritan's Feet has been a great partner with the city of Charlotte in helping us to heal after the civil unrest in 2016. And so they had this event at Martin Luther King Middle School last Saturday, and I'm pleased to have the mayor to attend. We had Councilmember Mitchell was there, I was there, and about a host of clients there in that Hidden Valley neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. Had a good turnout and a good program, and I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out to support Samaritan's Feet and what they're trying to do in sustaining a reconciliation effort here in Charlotte. Thank you very much.
Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to give an update to you, my colleagues. I'm working with the manager's office and staff. I had the opportunity to attend a conference these last few days, and one of our topics around transportation is specifically looking at some communities that have successfully identified how to connect their light rail to the airport and for it to be more accessible. So we're looking at a couple of different options, and also I will be having a meeting this coming Friday with trying to strengthen a relationship with AARP. We had a really good starting conversation this 2 days ago during the conference, specifically around senior housing and senior diverse price point housing, and also looking at senior housing for the LGBTQ community because we're seeing a number of issues that are rising for all of our poor working class seniors when it comes to affordability. So I will be working very closely with our housing director and our city manager team and Director Campbell to see how we can implement some best practices here as we move forward with surpassing our goal of 5,000, which we are more than 66% towards our goal in our first 11 months of issuing it.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ishmael.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to recognize 2 local teams that are traveling to Silicon Valley later this week for Entrepreneurship Boot Camp. So this is the first program that was implemented outside of California to bring opportunities for our youth, to give them an opportunity to build their business at a young age. And these are all high school students that have done an amazing job of presenting their business plans, and they were selected to go to Silicon Valley to compete and potentially get some seed money and develop these large companies and employ folks right here in Charlotte. So don't be surprised if you see next wave of technology leaders right here from our city. And I'm very excited to actually have those local talent right here. And I also would like to recognize Councilmember Larkin Eggleston for coming to support over the weekend, as well as Councilmember Isolt, Mayor Pro Tem Isolt now, and Councilmember Mitchell for their support of this program.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On Saturday, December 16th, we will celebrate the first ever Black entrepreneurship in the city of Charlotte. The Carolina Small Business Development out of Raleigh is hosting this event. It will be held this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Camp North, and you will enter off Statesville Road on the Statesville Road side. Admission is free, and our own Kevin Dick will serve on the panel to talk about entrepreneurship in the city of Charlotte. This Saturday, December 16th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you would like to register, please go to www.carolinasmallbusiness.org. Thank you.
Just a few things that I wanted to mention. One, when we have our speakers come down, and that sense of urgency around housing, affordable housing, and transit and transportation options. I mean, we understand it, and sometimes we get into how are we going to do it and what are we going to do, and sometimes we are reminded by people how important that is, heartfelt every day, and that's the good thing about hearing from our citizens. This past week, I had the opportunity to go to Washington to meet with our delegation, basically to introduce myself and to say that we look forward to working with them. And we'll get some information about that meeting. We also had an opportunity to meet with a member of the administration, the President's administration, on the infrastructure bill. So it was quite a full day and full visit. And then the next day, I went to the Metro Mayors meeting, which is comprised of cities over 50,000 mayors that are there. And if you remember, we've participated in that group since its founding. And they are trying to determine how best to make that organization work. And there are some things that we do, but it was good to hear the discussions of their strategic plan going forward. And just as a note, tomorrow I'm going to be going to Raleigh to meet with the NCDOT, particularly around some of the issues that we have in our long-range transportation plan, and to follow up with them on some of those things. These are primarily introductory meetings that I'm participating in, and somewhere along the line we'll get you some written materials about what the key points are, and we'll try to do that before the end of the year.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to mention briefly, some of you are involved in Room in the Inn, which helps our houses of faith and our schools that help house the homeless during this very cold season. Urban Ministries is also looking for help with collecting tarps, blankets, sleeping bags, and tents. So if you have any extra things like that, if you could bring them over to Urban Ministries, they'd be much appreciated. And pray for a little bit warm weather for our homeless neighbors.
I wanted to speak on a topic that I first became aware of last September 2016 as I became more involved in city council business, and it rings even more true now. This is a part-time job, and Charlotte City Council, from what I can tell in the research that I've been doing, operates under a very similar structure that it was chartered under back in the late 1920s. We changed strictly from an at-large makeup to districts in the late 70s, I do believe, but that's really the most significant change. Look, I know Mayberry is set in North Carolina, but Charlotte's no Mayberry. The people of Charlotte, they should have a full-time government advocating for their needs day in and day out. As one of my colleagues has said, this is just not enough time to deal with all of the issues that need to be dealt with, and having to decide whether to go to work and provide wages for your family or do the business of serving the people of Charlotte. Not only that, but the way it is structured, that every 2 years you have to run for office and raise money. You're only working for a year, really truly serving the people. I hope that we would consider looking at this over these next couple years. I would love to see a 4-year staggered term where we look at district races in one cycle and citywide races in another. Look, this is not just something about job security here. This is about doing the business of the people, and this is a full-time job. We're one of the top 10 cities in the country. We are financial capital of the world. We have one of the busiest, most important airports in the transportation infrastructure of the world. We are an emerging, growing city. The people deserve it. Business deserves it. Our staff deserves it. I hope we will be willing to consider and have this difficult, politically difficult, potentially difficult conversation and make this truly a full-time job. Thank you.
Mr. Driggs?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank the Temple Bethel Brotherhood Group for inviting me to speak to them yesterday. It was a very enlightening conversation, similar to one I had a few weeks ago at United Methodist Church. And what it drove home to me was the lack of information in spite of all of our efforts about much of what goes on in city government. So I think there is scope for us to continue to promote awareness of our activities. And I say that particularly because on the issue of economic opportunity, for example, a lot of people are kind of going, how can that be still? Or else they're saying, I'm concerned about that, but what can I do? And maybe the faith community, and these are two different faiths, can be harnessed in a larger scale way to try to address those issues. There was also, I will say, a lot of concern about infrastructure investment and the congestion problems we're facing. This is very near to people's heart. And frankly, for my district, I don't have a good answer. I mean, it feels as if we're kind of strangling. I had some work done on traffic congestion in conjunction with the rezoning that I've been considering for the last few months. And when you look at the most congested intersections in Charlotte plotted on a map, they are highly concentrated in District 6 and 7. And I can't point to any infrastructure investment that promises some kind of relief to people there. I can't even get a sidewalk approved. So I hope that in this term we will recognize the need to balance our investments in such a way that we maintain the prosperity that funds much of the things that we do. And that was my takeaway. Once again, thanks to Temple Bethel for giving me that opportunity to speak, and I hope I'll have other occasions to go out and interact with the community. Thank you.
Dr. Harlow?
Thank you. I just would like to highlight the Historic West End Initiative and the West End Director, Alicia Osborne, social justice creative Janelle Dunlap, and culinary artist and chef Greg Collier for a successful event that they held at the Wadsworth Estate last week called Art, Soul, and Gentrification. It was an alternative form of an open house where people would gather in the house, see the house, but also tour it and have conversations around the housing market in Charlotte, particularly on Charlotte's west side. I hope that this term that we can continue the conversations around affordable housing. We've heard tonight about senior housing and the need for that. We've got to do more, in my opinion, around protecting neighborhoods. I think we're always playing from behind. The conversations that were had at this open house around gentrification really led to what I consider the real problem, and that's displacement. We talk a lot about the buzzword gentrification, but we have to talk more about displacement and who that's affecting. The working poor, our fixed income senior citizens. If we don't start looking at the real cause of that around property tax, around increasing rents, and how we can help provide gap funding for that. How can we look at more municipal service districts, the MSD model that we already have, to make sure that some of those tax dollars can come back into the communities that they are meant to serve. I'm going to continue to bring this up. Council, Mr. Manager, and staff, I hope that the community will continue to continue voicing those concerns. We know what the issues are. We have voiced it. We now have a mandate via this election around what those issues are, and it's up to us to do something about it. So we've got to create some solutions through our committees and this council. I look forward to helping with it.
Mr. Eggleston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Three quick things. I want to echo Councilwoman Ajmera's encouragement to the youth team that is headed to California this week. We got the opportunity to see a brief version of their presentations that they're going to give yesterday. These are very energetic, very intelligent young people in middle school and high school that I'm certain are going to represent us well in California. So best of luck to them. I want to send condolences to the families and friends of people. We had two violent tragedies this weekend in Charlotte. One in the Woodland Park neighborhood of District 1 and one in Southwest Charlotte. So we want to send our condolences to those people who lost or were impacted by those tragedies this weekend. And in that same vein, would want to invite people to the Domestic Violence Memorial Tree Ceremony that's being held Thursday, December 14th. So this week from 5:30 to 6:30 at the CMPD Law Enforcement Center, 601 East Trade Street in the main lobby. It's free and open to the public, and will commemorate the more than 70 lives lost to domestic violence in Mecklenburg County and across North Carolina during 2017, and that number this weekend went up. The Woodland Park tragedy was a domestic violence incident, and it's an increasing problem in our community and something that we need to address head on. So would invite you to join me at that on Thursday. Thank you.
Mr. Bakari.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Excellent point, Larkin, on that last one. That's our number one priority, and we're well over 80 homicides now. So when we look at these trends, I look forward to learning more of the Chief's program as it relates to dispute resolution, which obviously seems to be a large, if there is a tying theme to these large numbers, a large part of that. So absolutely there, I'll mirror my colleagues' sentiments. A shout out to the city staff with leadership from Fran West on the South Park CNIP workshop that happened 2 weeks ago. I was there every day for a 4-day stretch dropping in, and it's incredible work developing a vision for District 6, South Park, South Charlotte there, into what our identity needs to be to continue the great growth we've had into the next 10 years. So love what they're doing. I'll tag on to my colleague Winston, Councilman Winston's comments of the 4-year staggered terms. You'd find a supporter in me, especially if we can also make part of that dialogue term limits as a perspective of both ends of that equation. But I like the idea. Big thanks to staff over the last couple weeks, especially a shout out to Jeff Stovall, who we've had a number of great conversations. Thank you for an open mind and partnering and working as you, Mr. Manager, on especially the cybersecurity and IT infrastructure topics that last week with the county's event have been a real wake-up call, I think, to everybody. And then finally, 2 things. Shout out to all startup tech, fintech, IT, or innovative companies here in Charlotte. If you've got ideas for how we can revolutionize and bring city government to the next level, and you have a concept that you've been building, what better way to partner with you directly here in town? So please send me via my city email address any of your ideas or concepts. I'll route them to the right folks, because I'd love to create more of a direct pipeline of using our startup talent. And then finally, I didn't pull the item for discussion into the consent item today, number 21, the city strategic research and consulting services, because we have more homework to do in getting up to speed ourselves, the new council members, on what makes sense and what doesn't. But I do just want to plant a seed and perhaps for later exploration. You know, I've been staggered by the number of times in meetings that the staff has told me, well, we need to pull the consultant in on this, the consultant in on this. This was approval tonight for $125,000 for a consultant. Many of us have met him and know his work is solid, but I'd love to see a study on how much consulting spend we're having and how much, what's our approach here? What should we be doing in-house with the expertise we have versus actually going out? I'm not saying we shouldn't go out, but I'm wondering what that total spend is and how can we be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars while also getting what we need. Thank you.
I think we can get the manager to give you that information. It's been something that we do as a regular follow-up, particularly around what we do contract out. And you're right. I'm not sure consultant is a big word these days. I don't know, engineering, infrastructure, traffic, you know, marketing. It's just amazing what people are doing and thought behind it, our policy around it. I did want to mention one other thing. Council Mayor Pro Tem, it's going to take me a minute. Mayor Pro Tem Eisel and I were talking about several years ago, Councilmember Driggs was here. We did, in Mayfield and Phipps, we did a bus tour of the city that we went through every district. And I know that we've been talking a lot about meeting times. I would like to ask if you would be willing to try to squeeze something in before we go to the retreat. I don't even know if it's possible. I can imagine the staff is over there groaning, groaning at this idea, because it is a lot of work. But when we talk about those intersections of congestion, when we talk about gentrification, when we talk about, you know, how District 3 is going to be Asheville, and all of those things, the CNET plan in South Park, I don't think we all have the same foundation of understanding. And if we can possibly, and I don't know how to do it, but I think it's always good to visit your own city and hear from the people that know it closely, the people like Maddie Marshall up there that's live streaming us, but the people that are the district members, having them organize and work towards that. I may be premature, but let me have, if there's anyone that would think it would be foolish to try to do that before end of January, and I know it's aggressive. And if we can't do it before we go on the retreat, we'll have to do it right after, because I really do believe we all need to know everyone's corner of this earth. Everyone that comes down here lives here, and we need to know more about our community. So
I would support that. I think a big burden on the staff, so we need to know whether the work. I'd really actually be interested to get an update of the information that we each received about our districts.
That's true.
I found that very useful reference, but I realize that requires some lead time. Otherwise, I'm ready at the drop of a hat to give a tour of my district. So,
Thank you. I think we hear affirmation of that. And Mr. Newton, Matt Newton, if you're watching us on live stream, we can hardly wait for you to get here and be sworn in. So, did you just tell him to stay?
No, it's like today.
G'day.
He's being strong.
He's Australia.
I know where he is. It just took me a moment to hear it. Okay, so.
I hope he's doing something more fun than watching.
Wait, don't pack up. I have one more thing. I move that we go into a closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11-A and (3) to consult with attorneys employed or retained by the city in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege and to consider and give instructions to the attorneys concerning the handling of a claim. Could I have that as a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye. It is 10:08. We will start that meeting promptly at 5 of. Back in the back room.
C14.
CH 14.